Watercolour moves, and that should say it all. Unlike oils and acrylics, this medium actually moves not only in the well, but on the paper. It will go towards wet areas and stop when it meets dry ones. It will puddle indents in your paper and drip when you tilt it. Let's face it, watercolour is the most challenging medium to teach ourselves, and so many of us give up because we can't get over the first obstacles. In this 15-minute video, I will give you a few hacks on how to understand this very rebellious medium and how to tame it so your painting experience can be one that brings you joy. So let's dive into it and see what we can do about it. By the way, my name is Fiona and this is Drawings in a Drawer. Welcome back to this channel, or welcome if you're new here. On here we mainly discuss things watercolour, so if that is something that might interest you, be sure to click on the notification bell and to subscribe so you won't miss any of my future uploads. I'm going to be taking this from a slightly different angle, and instead of giving you all the tips most of us have already heard of time and time again, and I will give you some of these if they are crucial, of course, or it wouldn't be a beginner-friendly tutorial. But I'm also going to say some things that people talk about a little less when it comes to watercolour and that I think would be helpful. The first tip, hack, call it whatever you want, is give up that fight to find the perfect water to paint golden ratio for every step of the painting. It is near impossible to work that out as a beginner. So instead, do something else. Allow the water to take you for a joyride and let it do the blending for you. As you can see here, not only did I get rid of the white of the paper by creating a simple wet and wet background, so just dropping wet paint into a surface I'd pre-wet with paint or even pre-wet with clear water, and I created a soft, beautiful backdrop for my spread without any effort at all. But I'm also able to paint these gorgeous fall leaves just by allowing pinks, yellow and green to blend on their own on the paper. At the most, I am barely easing them along with my brush. So start with simple subjects that you know will give you a lovely result. And fall leaves are actually a really good idea, a good place to start. I want to highlight that this doesn't mean at all that water to paint ratio is not crucial in watercolour, because it is. But playing around with simple shapes and to see what this magical dance between water and pigment can do for you is the right step to take, rather than trying to understand it from a point of view that is quite honestly much less fun and exciting. Tip or hack number 2, or is it 3? Well, it doesn't matter. Tap your brush, create those splatters. Why? Because it will break the ice. It will give you an immediate demonstration of what watercolour can do and what you can potentially do. And it's easy enough. Just tap the back of the handle of your brush with your forefinger or the handle of another paintbrush. This is not officially a hack, but if by any chance you're painting autumn leaves too, use the back end of your paintbrush or a metal letter opener to create the veins. Thus the paint will naturally flow into the dents we create this way, and the final look will be much more natural than if we went in later and tried this with a pencil or a small paintbrush. Don't obsess over water to paint ratio. I said this in the beginning of the video. Wet and dry and wet are just wet paint on a dry surface or wet paint on a wet surface. But what about wet on damp? Look at what it can do. What I'm saying is to keep an open mind and try to forget most of what you've heard about watercolour techniques, because it very literally boils down to the fact that you have to accept you cannot ever control this medium completely. The sooner you know that, the sooner you'll get on with it. I'm not going to tell you how important it is to have proper cotton watercolour paper because you already know that, don't you? But I am going to ask you, do you know your brush or brushes? How soft they are, how thirsty they are, how they behave when they're dehydrated. You have to treat them like individuals, each with their own personality. And I kid you not, I will be making a whole video about this. It's so important. Do you load your bristles fully? How does your brush act when you use the tip, the side, when it's damp, almost dry? You need to know these things. So take your time to get acquainted with your watercolour brushes. This will spare you so much time knowing which one to reach for in different stages of a painting and which one will give better results for a certain subject. I very often hear this from people starting out, even if they have no interest in photorealism. My painting is all wrong, it looks nothing like the reference photo. Unless you're trying to paint someone's portrait, the reference photo is there just to show us where the light, shadow and mid-tones sit. The beauty is seeing how every artist has their own interpretation of the same subjects. So use reference photos with this mindset. They are teaching us about values, again light, mid-value and dark value, and they are giving you the chance to interpret what you see, which, you've guessed it, is what we call an individual artistic style. And that is how you develop it. You won't ever see anything exactly like someone else does, and that will and it must show through in your paintings. So let go of the pressure that the reference image creates. If something is missing in your painting, it might be contrast. Remember our 3 values? Just double check you have the darkest value in there. You might need to push it a bit further to see things pop, as you see me do here with these dark outlines, background and details. When I started in watercolour, my goal was to paint portraits. I really wanted to paint faces, is what I loved. And I cannot remember how many tutorials I looked up about how to mix skin tones. But they were never what I wanted. Everything seemed to be so neat and controlled. I wanted to be loose, more expressive. Then I discovered that I could literally start off with mud, a mix of cadmium red and Naples yellow with a pinprick of cerulean or indigo to desaturate the colour, creates a beautiful watery puddle that you can start off and build up any skin tone really as you layer. It was such a relief for me to never have to think what colours to mix to start a portrait. So you really have no excuses now if you also like to paint watercolour faces. Just grab what's left over in your dirty palette and get going. And this is a big one. Stop being afraid of wet and wet, i.e., lack of control. I'm not just going to advise you to stop doing this, but I'm going to give you a reason. Watercolour dries so much lighter that when we are painting in these first very diluted washes, anything that spreads and seems to run away from the sketch outline, like the lips and the eyes, is just basically going to dry almost clear, and you can easily dab it up with a wad of kitchen paper. This is definitely a time when you have more capability to manoeuvre, to correct mistakes, and discover new effects. And I know I've pushed myself a little bit in the territory of the non-beginner when I talked about portraits and painting skin. So now let me go completely in the opposite direction, and if nothing else works for you, sketch directly with your watercolour brush, toss out your pencil or just put it aside for the time being. Paint simple shapes by pressing down the shape of your bristles to the paper. Notice the pressure you need. Use more in the tip and then lift and see how that works. Add in a drop of another colour and see what happens. Draw squares, circles, ovals, and you will soon notice that they will begin to resemble things you know, like flowers, berries, or a robin's egg, for example. My last tip seems like the simplest one, but really it's not. It's so easy to stop having fun when you take something seriously. But you keep that fun and passion and excitement in there. It won't always show up, but please don't allow it to disappear completely from your practice, or you'll be losing something precious. So when that happens, just take a break and paint something completely different from what you're used to. Believe me, it almost always works to get you excited again. Before I go, I wanted to say that one of the 2 winners from my sketchbook hasn't claimed her prize, so I randomly picked a new one, and it's Anne-Marie Laurenton. And she'll be getting my sketchbook with the bird and fish from the video from 2 weeks ago where I did a giveaway. Please send me your address within the end of this week so I can mail you your painted sketchbook. Everyone, remember to check the description box for ways to connect with me. Remember to share this content with other art lovers and to like it if you liked it. And I will see you next Sunday. Bye for now. Thank you.